name is Kelly Dowdy, and I'm the Georgian Court Vegetarian Society's president and founder. I actually founded the club back in 2007, and this has been a dream of mine to have Jasmin Singer here today to speak to us. This is just amazing. It's a gift, and I am so happy to be here today. And to welcome Jasmin Singer, and I would like to have everybody give her a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kelly and Jessica and everybody who came out today. I'm actually originally from New Jersey, so it's nice to be back. My name is Jasmin Singer, and currently I run a website called Our Hen House, which you could find online, or you could grab a postcard from the front. And it is located at ourhenhouse.com online. And Our Hen House is a central clearinghouse for all kinds of ideas on how individuals can create change for animals. You'll hear me say this again and again in the next hour, probably more times than two. No matter where you are, no matter what brought you here today, no matter what your talents, interests, or special skills are, no matter what your background is, you can find a way to use it to benefit animals. And we're going to talk a little bit about how today. No matter who you are, this is absolutely possible. And I don't care if you call yourself an activist or not. If you call yourself an activist, that's what we're going to refer to it today as. But if you don't like the word, call yourself an advocate, call it a hobby. I don't care what you call it. But I do care that you do it, and I hope that you care too. I promise you that once you get involved with speaking up for the underdogs, and the farm animals and all animals, both human and non, you can find that new doors open up for you and that it can be a really cool experience. The meat industrial complex is going to collapse. It's completely unsustainable. It's way too resource intensive to feed an exponentially growing population. It's destroying the earth. It's bad for people's health in a lot of different ways, and it only survives because it's completely secret. They are hiding this enormous secret from the American public, and the system is so unsustainable that the only question is whether or not it's going to go down in time to save the planet. There are starting to be cracks in the wall of secrecy. And obviously that's because of the advocacy efforts of people like you and the growing awareness about all of the harms caused by the animal agriculture industry. So it's going to go down. It has to. But unlike other social justice movements, the primary goal of our movement is not simply to include another group into the mainstream of society. The goal instead is to change what people buy. Though I know that I, for one, am often fooled into thinking that I am in the mainstream, since I know so many vegans and vegetarians, and since I live in a city with 160 veg restaurants, many of which are in walking distance from my apartment. I know I'm bragging, but the truth is we're not in the mainstream at all. And though it is hard to equate, some studies have said that vegans make up 0.5% of the American population, effectively putting us in the margin of error. But maybe there's another way of looking at it. For a margin of error group, we are a very powerful bunch. We have landed on the front cover of mainstream publications. We have garnered attention through the awesome advocacy efforts of celebrities and policymakers like Ellen DeGeneres and Dennis Kucinich. In the past few years alone, we have put farm animal issues on the ballot and on the map. And as you all probably already know, as far as social networking outlets like Facebook and Twitter, vegans have kicked it out of the tofu dog-laden ballpark. Put that together with the animal ag industry starting to collapse, and we are in a good, productive place. Not good enough a place where we can sit back, relax, and watch our reruns of The Nanny on our Netflix Insta-queue. No, not until you've done your dose of daily activism. After you've done that, absolutely sit back, watch The Nanny, or whatever your activity of choice is. Mine is The Nanny. Margin of error. Isn't that insane? 10 billion land animals are killed for food annually in this country alone. It seems to me we are in the margin of certainty. And it is our job to take advantage of the power that we have proven we have, get out of the margin of error, and effectively mainstream our message. We have already determined that the big difference between the animal rights movement and other types of social justice is that, very generally speaking, of course, Their goal includes ending the subjugation and marginalization of insert oppressed group here, whilst ours involves changing the consumption habits of all consumers. And the main difference between the overall animal rights movement and the more specific farm animal rights movement is that with farm animal activism, our goal can really be boiled down to food activism. Every person who goes vegan or vegetarian or vegan 1 day a week or 3 days a week or 5 days a week as a result of what you feed them is a small victory for our movement. And one way we can effectively push ourselves out of the margin of error is by educating and feeding everyone we've ever met in our entire lives. But we also have to think bigger than that, because unless you're Ellen DeGeneres, chances are you don't know millions and millions of people. It really strikes me as laughable when the animal ag industry say that animal rights folks are against farmers. It's so ridiculous. Farmers grow food. I, for one, happen to love food, and I am duly grateful to the people who bring it to me. When the meat industrial complex starts to disintegrate, people aren't going to stop eating. And that means people are going to continue making money by those people eating. And as they do with our food activism today, we can make sure that the ones feeding the planet tomorrow are the good guys. And don't think that the industry hasn't noticed either. Cargill, one of the world's biggest animal agribusiness companies, is making vegan cheese. They might be evil, but apparently they're not stupid. This is going to happen, but every second that we wait for it to happen, instead of doing something about it, 286 chickens die. These are chickens who were born to have a life of misery. So we need to push this along. The suffering is just too great for us not to. Not to mention the fact that animal agribusiness is ravaging the world. And while the change will come, there's no reason to suppose that it will come in time before catastrophic climate change, food poisoning epidemics, and environmental destruction have taken their toll on our fragile little planet. These guys are destroying the world as I speak, and we have to act. As I said, there are already starting to be cracks in the wall, and we need to spend our time showing those cracks to people who hadn't before noticed them. And others of us are going to focus our energy on creating new cracks, or making the existing cracks deeper and wider. There is room for each of us and all of us in this movement. Do you know where there's not room for us? There is not room for us to not join in. If you see a dog getting kicked, you would probably jump in and try and save her. Hopefully you would succeed. Regardless of whether or not you succeed, this experience will amp you up. You will tell your friends about it that night. I saw this jerk kicking a dog, you'll say. You are now an activist. This has made you an activist. You now care about something. But what if you didn't actually see the dog getting kicked, but you know for a fact it's happening? Do you just give it a passing thought and say, oh, that's too bad, and then move on to your next thought? Because after all, you didn't kick the dog, and it's not like you were there to see it happen. And besides, you have dinner plans at 6 and it's 5:40 now. And what I'm saying is this: when is it our moral imperative to get active for animals? You might be thinking, but I'm shy, I'm busy, I'm a parent, I'm a student, I'm not as knowledgeable as this person or that person. Well, that's the beauty of activism, and that's the power that comes with knowing that there is room for all of us by this cracked wall. As I keep saying, 286 chickens die every second in this country, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is a number I find difficult to fathom, and a number I simply cannot ignore. Obviously, you can't ignore it, or you wouldn't have been here today. And since we can't ignore this, and since there's room for us to do more, and since the industry is coming down, and since the planet is too, and since we, for reasons we don't really understand, have come to be aware of this, for whatever reason, it seems pretty simple that it is our obligation to do something. We need a multi-pronged approach, and we need to think big. We need to think mainstream. So while there is nothing wrong with leafleting on the street corner, and in fact I'm a big proponent and participant in grassroots tactics such as those, we also have to crank it up a notch. In addition to leafleting on the street corner, we need to create a massive shift in society. We need to change the way the vast majority of consumers consume. Some might say that the media is the way in, or at least one of the main ways in. This has already started to happen, but again, we need to amp it up, and there are ways to do that. I'm going to go over a few different ways that you could get involved. And as I'm talking, I hope that you'll start to think about what you're good at and how you might be able to use that to create change for animals on a teeny tiny scale or on a big gigantic scale, whatever. For those of you who are exploring what to do with the rest of your life, you might consider going into PR. One of the beauteous things and dynamite parts about media is that its potential is insurmountable. As I keep saying, a major, huge, enormous goal that we all must be trying to aspire to, no matter what our avenue, is to mainstream our message, and media can give us the opportunity. Most of us, if we get the chance to talk about veganism, focus on animal rights. Fantastic. We should be bringing up animal issues whenever we possibly can. But in addition to bringing up the egregious abuses to animals on factory farms, one way of broadening the message is to reach a larger audience, is to make connections to topics that are relevant in the media today. So, for example, these can include global warming. Newsflash, environmentalists, though it's great that you're carrying a cloth bag home from the grocery store instead of a plastic one, the fact that you have a steak dinner in that cloth bag kind of negates your gold star. The animals can benefit from any media coverage that they can get that is spun the right way. So start spinning. As the media continues to pick up these stories, and more broadly speaking, pick up the trend that the meat industrial complex is collapsing, guess what will happen? More companies will realize that there is a demand for vegan products, and they will start to create them. Look at what happened with Cargill. When I first heard about the vegan cheese with Cargill, I thought it was a product of the Yes Men, a prank from the Yes Men. Thank you for those of you who know what I'm talking about. What I'm going to do now is lay out a few different categories for us. These are categories where your activism could fit. Within Grassroots, we have one of my favorite categories, which I alluded to before, creative activism or advocacy. This includes everything that you can possibly imagine, but specifically talking about creativity, let's say art, let's say visual art for an example. Think of artists like Sue Ko, whose art is as harrowing as it is educational, or the syndicated columnist Dan Ferraro, who draws the Bizarro cartoons. His cartoons are worldwide. Through putting the animal message into his cartoons, he has educated probably millions and millions of people. Also within Grassroots, you have feed-ins and all types of food activism. This includes making delicious vegan cupcakes for your school's event or your work's event, and sending me several. I'm all in it for the cause. Bridging Grassroots with media outreach, we have writing. Even if you are not enough of a writer to consider getting your work published, there are still things you can do. You can write letters to the editor. So just think about it, do it, write one, try and write one a week. I know that it's easy to look at an article and be like, someone should do something about that. And then be like, is the coffee on yet? And just forget about it. Well, try and create an attainable goal for yourself. Is it one letter a week? Is it one letter a month? It's easy to find articles to respond to on Facebook, by creating Google alerts for yourself, by listening to what people are talking about, by watching The View, I don't know. For those of you who are writers, try to pen a column in your local paper, or in your school paper even, about animal issues. Or better yet, pitch some stories to some mainstream magazines. I would suggest getting a copy of Writer's Market Deluxe if you're interested in the more mainstream publications. $30 on Amazon, tells you how to pitch to every single publication. It's really amazing. And then once you find something you want to pitch to, create a pitch that is relevant to that particular publication. So if you're pitching a women's magazine, why not pitch a story about great women who work in activism? Or if you're pitching a health magazine, well, that one's easy. If you're working with a group, large or small, and you have a good media story, you might want to perfect the art of press release writing. Remember, you can find out all of this by Googling it. Start to develop relationships with journalists and make your pitches strong and important. This is particularly effective when you're dealing with local community outreach, because a lot of local papers are eager to showcase what you are doing for or with your community. Now let's talk visuals. Many people are creating great videos from mainstream releases like The Cove, which, by the way, just won Best Documentary at the Academy Awards and was nominated alongside Food Inc., which is another animal rights film, to essentially amateur productions, which you can find on YouTube. People like Donnie Moss, who just made a film about the horse and carriage industry in New York City, and Marisa Miller-Robson, who just made this, knew nothing about filmmaking. And then they turned this around. So come up with a film that you like and maybe do a screening of it at your school, at your Y, at your health club. For the students in the room, which is a lot of you, you might be in one of the best positions of all to create positive change. Let's talk about academic outreach. Does your school provide a course in human animal studies, the philosophy of animal rights, animal law, animals in literature? Why not? If it does it have a minor? If it has a minor, does it have a major? If not, why not? Demand that, or at least request that. And spreading the word should not be just in courses devoted to the subject. If you have an opportunity to do independent study, create an animal-related project. Whenever you choose a paper topic, make it about animals. You will not only have the opportunity to hone your own thinking, which is really important, but you will also be educating your professor, who does, after all, have to read that paper. Bring up animal issues in class whenever they are remotely relevant. The animals do not have time for you to get over being shy. You will find that once people get over the initial block of thinking this is unimportant or laughable, that most people will find themselves passionate about animals. They might agree with you or they might vehemently disagree, but they will be thinking about the issue. And isn't that kind of discussion exactly what education should be? And isn't that how we go about starting to create change? By the way, Bob Barker just donated $1 million to his alma mater, Drury University, to create a chair in animal law. The man seems to have unlimited resources to donate to animal causes, and maybe your school could be next. And even if not, maybe the powers that be up at your school would find it interesting to know that that kind of money could be available. It might make them wake up and listen. Money talks. Or should I say money squawks? A lot of people who are interested in devoting their lives to animals are going into animal law, and it's having an effect. Over 100 law schools have a course in animal law, and it's time to raise that ante too. Try to get an advanced seminar in animal law or in standing, and enter a writing competition, whether or not you're a lawyer. Use it to speak up for animals. There are zillions of opportunities. In fact, on my website, ourhenhouse.com, we do post calls for papers quite often, if you're interested, and we also will say how you could potentially use that to speak up for animals. And we is me and my partner, who is an animal law professor, so that's convenient. Of course, you know, a lot of people when they get out of law school or even college have trouble making it work, finding a career that is devoted to animals, but it doesn't really matter. You could do, and even if you're like a school nurse, in here, you could put out some brochures or like whatever you do, there's ways, I'm sure that we could come up with them now if you can't come up with them yourselves. And I know many of you like me aren't lawyers, but you still have to live. And if you can't find a way to work for animals while still making a living, another opportunity is to create a business. Did you see Howard Lyman had a shirt on that said Moo Shoes? Yeah. Where I used to work a long time ago. Moo Shoes is a vegan shoe store in New York City. There's lots of for-profit opportunities too. I used to think that I should open a vegan suit business or like a vegan tie business, which I'm probably not going to do, so I just gave you guys 2 business ideas. And I expect nothing short of 10%. You know, one of the great things about everyone here coming up with all of these ideas is that, aside from the fact that they have the potential to change the world, thinking in these positive ways also has the potential to transform ourselves. And we're used to being horrified and angry, and there's lots of reasons to be both. But if we can find something positive to work on that really energizes us, we can put a lot of joy in our lives and find a lot of meaning. So we will be heard that way, you know, and we will be listened to, and we will make change. And we just have to get out there and start chipping away the best way we know how.